Hello, everyone. All right, so it is eclipse season, and this is the first eclipse for this eclipse season in September. It is a lunar eclipse. So, since it's a lunar eclipse, there's a certain amount of fulfillment or realization or a culmination of something that began 2 weeks prior during the lunation. Now, a lunar eclipse is very strong. It's going to give a very strong effect that you are going to remember and that will affect your life, especially this one because it is being influenced by two slow-moving planets of Saturn and Jupiter. And I'm really excited to tell you all about it. But first, I want to let you know that my name is Laura. I am a tropical Vedic astrologer. I also use some Western and Hellenic techniques. I give readings, I have books, and I sell courses as well. Those are all linked in the description. If you're interested in any of those things, please take a look, okay? All right, so this lunar eclipse. A lunar eclipse is basically a full moon that is being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow, and it's in the middle of a lunation cycle, okay? So what began 2 weeks prior is coming to its fulfillment. It's coming, you're getting an event can happen that you have a realization around something. And what you are going to realize or the fulfillment that you have been expecting as the moon has traveled this 2 weeks, as it has waxed from that new moon, is going to be something that you are not expecting and that you are not necessarily prepared for. However, whatever it is, it's going to be long term. It's going to give very long term effects. All right. Before I get into how it will affect you for each ascendant or rising sign, they're the same thing. I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac, okay? Before I get into that, I just want to talk about the collective for a little bit. Okay, so you have this moon in Pisces at 15 degrees of Pisces, and it is being eclipsed, and it is with Saturn. Saturn has just retrograded back into Pisces. And in Vedic astrology, when two planets are in a sign, they are considered to be UT. That means they're conjunct, basically. They are influencing each other, even though they are very far away degree wise. Okay. Now, the other planets that are influencing are doing it through orbs of influence. So you have Jupiter aspecting from Cancer. It's close enough to make a very strong aspect, and Jupiter gives a planetary aspect the ninth from himself. So he is naturally aspecting not only through a Western trine aspect, but also through a Vedic astrology planetary aspect of Jupiter. So you're getting a full aspect of Jupiter. So that is a very beneficial thing for this new moon, or sorry, for this solar or lunar eclipse. I have to get this straight in my head, right? And that's beneficial. Then you have Mercury aspecting. Mercury is opposite the moon in the sign of Virgo with the sun also aspecting the moon very strongly. Those are two very good influences. Okay, so there are beneficial influences to this lunar eclipse, but the fact that it is with Saturn, Saturn is going to deny some things, it's going to slow things down, it's going to present obstacles that you really can't do much about. And Saturn is designed to make you desire something, or you're expecting something to happen, you're expecting some type of fulfillment. You don't get it, but you do get something again that you weren't expecting. And whatever it is that you get, the fulfillment that you get, the event that happens is something that you can work with and will be long term. It will be a very long term influence on your life. All right. Now, as far as in the mundane and collective, this is a more difficult aspect. So, what I'm predicting around the time of the eclipse, that's like 3 days prior, 3 days after, when the moon is still considered to be full, even though it's eclipsed, that I'm predicting that there's a loss of foundation. There's unstable foundations and a breakdown in foundations. There can be, building collapses, a breakdown in foundation around that. There can be loss of support for people who need it most in foundational organizations. All right. There's a loss of that support, but something else can come out of it, out of that loss, that will be very long term, some other type of organization that can help people in need. But there can be some, I don't want to say disaster, but some unfortunate event where the aid that's needed to get there probably will not. Okay. And this is because that moon is being what they call shamed by Saturn. I talked about this in my last video. This mostly happens during solar eclipses if there's a planet. Well, it always happens because it's with the sun and a node. All right. But you have Saturn and a node. You have Saturn in the North Node, or Rahu as they call it, influencing the moon. That puts the moon in what they call the shamed state. Now, that's difficult. What it is the moon is the planet where we get our needs met. Okay, it's the planet where we go out into the world and we experience this phenomena in the world, and we adapt to it, but we have certain needs, certain emotional needs and physical needs. In mundane astrology, the moon is the representative of the earth. All right, it's the closest thing to the earth. It orbits the earth. It's the only planet that does that. So it really does affect the earth in a big way, and it's kind of representing the earth in astrology in a lot of systems. And so when it is shamed, when it is harmed, that represents has a more negative connotation in mundane astrology. And if you remember the last lunation 2 weeks prior, the last new moon, that was intense. That was an intense new moon. I talked about that in my last video. So, it was forming the finger of God aspect. This is a really important lunation or lunar month, because now you have a lunar eclipse, and which will affect everyone, or affect the mundane, affect the world in a way where there can be something where there's a loss of support and there's a loss of foundation. All right. And that can translate into buildings losing their foundation, organizations losing their foundations, especially organizations that help people that cannot help themselves. That's what is very important here. Then we have the Decana influence, and we have the Sabian symbol, which I'll talk about. But there's also something else I wanted to mention that I mentioned in the previous video about foundational houses with the moon. So you have lunar yogas. There's no lunar yogas happening during this lunar eclipse, but there is influences from the foundational houses. So from that lunar eclipse in Pisces, you have Venus in the 6th house and Mars in the 8th house. The Mars in the 8th house makes this a little more difficult. It can bring very abrupt endings. Okay. But I'll talk about that more in a minute, but I want to talk about Venus in the 6th. So that means during this lunar eclipse, like 3 days before, 3 days after, during, September 7th, September 4th through September 10th, around that time, you have to work through certain things to succeed. And the things that you need to work through are represented by Venus, which are a little easier because Venus is a natural benefic. So Venus represents diplomacy. On the world stage, we have to work through diplomacy. It's very important in this lunar eclipse. Also, with Venus is respect. Okay, Venus rules respect from society. It also rules healthy pride. And on a negative side, it rules arrogance. So we have to work through those things on the world stage and individually. Okay. And it also has to do with self-worth, feeling worthy, feeling valuable, understanding what is valuable. Venus also rules trade. Okay. Because it rules Libra. Libra is the root trine of Venus, or the Mulla tricona, what they call it, and which is the sign of value, weighing value. You know, what is most important? I give you this, you give me what I want, I give you what you want, right? It's the sign of sharing. It's the scales, okay, weighing what is most important. So that is also something that needs to be worked through during these few days around this lunar eclipse, which is going to be surprising, which isn't going to be or unanticipated, all right? And then we have Mars. Okay, so Mars is in the eighth house from this lunar eclipse. And the eighth house has to do with unraveling the mystery and the longevity of something. Because it is a malefic, the longevity of something is going to be cut short. Okay, ending abruptly. That's Mars in the eighth. And then some things will last, though. They will continue on, they will last. Some things end very abruptly, but the things that do last for a very long time. And they do so through self-discipline, restraint or self-restraint, and self-improvement. All indications of Mars. But on the world stage, it has to do with military intervention or military in some way, police, military, fire, all those kinds of things. I also wanted to mention there can be droughts. I know there's already droughts happening, but they can cause more problems or more serious problems. Another thing that has to be walked through is aggression, frustration. That can also be on a mundane level. See, what's happening now during this eclipse season is big. It's going to give very long-term effects, and it is happening fast, and it is happening in a way that is completely transformative. Mars connected to the eighth house. Okay, so Mars is in the eighth, Mars is in Libra from this lunar eclipse in Pisces, is super transformative, but Mars is connected to the eighth in that it again ends things very quickly, ends things very abruptly. That's what Mars does. Mars cuts things away, and that's what the eighth house does. Put those two things together, you've got things ending very abruptly. Lot of transformation going on. Just because something ends or dies, the energy of it transforms into something else. So as you destroy something, that energy is transforming already. The minute you destroy it, it's transforming. Okay. So what is happening now on the world stage is a lot of things are ending, but what is left over, how that energy is transforming, is a long-term effect with the influence of Saturn as well. Saturn is keeping that long-term energy there as well. Okay. Now, I want to say that sometimes, you'll see Saturn with a lunar eclipse and you say, oh no, what I'm expecting is I'm going to be let down so much. I'm going to be denied. That's true to a certain degree, but there's a lot of good things about Saturn as well. All right, that is going to come through with this. In addition to the fact that on an individual level, it really depends on your rising sign. Saturn can give quite a lot when you have certain rising signs like Taurus and Libra and Capricorn. Okay. And to some extent, Aquarius, but not as much as those three that I just mentioned. For those three, Saturn actually becomes a pretty good planet. Okay, that can give things, that can give certain things, more so than he takes them away. But we'll get to that when I talk about each ascendant. But remember, this lunar eclipse is being aspected by Jupiter. It's in conjunct Venus. It's being supported by Venus, and it's also being aspected by Mercury. And it's in also one of the foundational houses, again, is Mars, like I was mentioning. Okay, so the Mercury aspect is going to give a lot of information. There is a lot of information coming to light around this lunar eclipse and information that is probably a surprise, all right? Or unforeseen. Okay, let's move on to the decans. All right, so for the decans of this lunar eclipse, which is the symbology that influences it quite strongly. So the moon is in the Cancer decans, means it's ruled by the moon. So that just reinforces this lunar quality, this water quality, and that is exactly what the decans is. It's a beautiful woman on a boat. She's surrounded by her family and her servants. There's multiple flags and banners on this boat, okay? And they're looking for a coastline to land. They're in the ocean and looking for a coastline, and she's carrying a staff. So there's a couple of things. This is a weapon drekana, or a weapon decans. That means that there is a certain amount of defense, self-defense, or defense. And again, that's also shown by Mars being in a foundational house from this lunar eclipse. Okay, so expect, like I said, military, police, something that needs to be defended or that is defended. Then we have being in the ocean, that's looking for the coastline. You're looking for somewhere to land. You're looking for stability. You're looking for security. You're looking for support. The support, though, isn't really, some of it is going to be destroyed or it's not going to be there, like I said before. Um, and then they have many banners on the boat, and that usually means uh, eliteness, high status, and some authority in some way. Floating in the ocean, that's the ocean of consciousness, that's in the emotions, but it's also can mean foreign relations. All right, in mundane astrology. Now, the Sabian symbol is flowing with inspiration. Okay, and the key word for it is ingenuity. There is definitely a certain amount of inspiration during this lunar eclipse, absolutely, through seeing what is left over when certain things are, or support is not there. There will be a scramble to look for other means of support, other means of a stable foundation, and there is an inspiration in that. There's an inspiration around the information that is uncovered and that is discovered due to that Mercury aspect. And it can be inspiring. It will be inspiring. And it's ingenuity. It's something that is completely creative and new. So kind of a lot going on with this lunar eclipse. And just like I said with the last lunation, the new moon that is part of this lunation, there is a serious intensity. What is happening in the world is very intense. What is going on is a lot of extremely, societal changes in a big way. Okay. So, yep, those are the predictions for the mundane. And now I'm going to move on to each ascendant. Okay, Aries rising. So you're having this a lunar eclipse in your 12th house of Pisces on September 7th. And a lunar eclipse is a pretty big deal. It's going to give events or results, or you're going to have a realization. There's some type of fulfillment that you're expecting with lunar eclipses because it's a full moon, only it is being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. It's with one of the nodes or one of the lunar nodes, Rahu or Ketu. In this case, it is with the North Node, Rahu, and with Saturn. And they give long-term effects that you will remember. I do want to say, though, that lunar eclipses are not as strong as solar eclipses in the time that they influence your life and also in the effects. Because it is a mid-cycle phenomena, a lunar eclipse is just a full moon. And so you're in this cycle that began in your sixth house of Virgo 2 weeks prior. Okay. So this is what you can expect. You can expect some expenses around health issues or some type of expense dealing with the law or bureaucracy or litigation in any way. Okay. You can also decide you want to get away from it all, go on a vacation, take it easy, get away from worldly concerns and the daily grind. But for some reason, those plans don't work out in the way you think they are going to. The reason is because of Saturn being there. All right. Saturn is what they call UT in Vedic astrology. That means it's conjoined. In Vedic astrology, if a planet is in the same sign, it is conjoined no matter how far away it is, okay? And so Saturn's going to give or present some obstacles that need to be overcome. Sometimes they won't be overcome. And Saturn will also delay certain things, all right? Especially if you want to do something that is going to be fun, Saturn's going to delay that. There is an aspect of Mercury and Jupiter onto this lunar eclipse, onto the moon. So there is a lot of beneficial things happening as well. And whatever happens in a 12th house type of way is going to be a long-term effect. So if you pay off expenses, that will be long term. If you acquire an expense, especially a health expense, an expense around litigation or the law in any way, that's going to be a long-term expense. If you decide to go on vacation, it will be a very memorable vacation or a time to get away, but there are going to be some obstacles in the way and some things that you have to deal with in that regard. If you do Saturnian type of things, like give in charity, which is Saturn is connected to the 12th house in that way, giving in charity, it doesn't need to be money or financial. It can be giving your skills, giving your time and energy, volunteering, anything like that. That's all within the realm of the 12th house. So doing something Saturnian like that will satisfy the requirements of Saturn or satisfy the indications of Saturn. And those things will be very beneficial for you. You allow wealth to flow through you. All right. So you make room for more wealth to come in. Okay. Or a more skill set or more time, or you get what you give eventually. You get back what you give eventually. Another thing about the 12th house is that it can be where you are laid up or, you're suffering from an illness or something and you need to relax and take it easy. And these times that we don't do anything, we don't think about anything, we just kind of let our mind relax or wander or just space out. These are the best times because everybody needs rest, and that is what the 12th house signifies. And during those restful times, we can come up with the best ideas or the best solutions to problems because we allow ourselves to rest and recuperate, which is the 12th house. And because of that aspect of Jupiter and Mercury, you will get information, you will get insights, You will figure something out. That's Mercury. You will investigate and you will discover the answer. If there has been something you've really wanted to understand, by resting and recuperating and allowing yourself not to worry, which is sixth house, right? Or work too much, focus on being productive all the time. It's time to rest and relax. We're humans, we need that time. And that's when you come up with the best ideas. That's when you come up with the best solutions. So this is all very much possibilities in the realm of your 12th house for an Aries rising around this time of the eclipse. Then as that moon begins to wane for the next few weeks, you're going to take those realizations and integrate them into your environment and tell the people you know about it. And also it becomes part of your unconscious. And some of these realizations are really going to be around sixth house types of things like your work ethic, how to solve problems, or you may be thinking about a problem you really need to solve. It's time to rest and relax, okay? Health issues, how you can solve your health issues, how you can pay off your debts, and how you can get rid of some of your expenses. Saturn in the 12th can get rid of expenses if that's what you want to do or if that's the direction you're moving in. So an important time for an Aries rising for this lunar eclipse. And again, it's a lunar eclipse, so it's going to be long-term effects that will affect your life in a big way. Hello, Taurus risings. Okay, so these are the predictions for the lunar eclipse that happens on September 7th in your 11th house of Pisces. And of course, I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. All right, so a lunar eclipse is a very important event. It indicates some significant changes in the life, or because it's a lunar eclipse or a full moon that is eclipsed, it shows a certain amount of fulfillment, a certain amount of realization, especially around 11th house and 5th house indications. Because a lunar eclipse is really just a full moon, and a full moon, of course, is the mid-cycle of something. It's the mid-cycle of the lunation. But it's a really important full moon, a very important full moon that you can expect something around, something to happen around 11th house issues and any other planets that full moon or that lunar eclipse is aspecting, okay, in your natal chart. But since I can't look at each particular or individual natal chart, this is mainly focused around the 11th house. Okay. And so that means that, so 2 weeks prior, you had a new moon in your 5th house of Virgo. And there's 2 new moons actually in Virgo. And for this kind of 2-month period between the end of August and September. And that is because that first new moon was in the very beginning of Virgo, and the next new moon will be a solar eclipse, and that's on the 21st. So there's a big concentration around 5th house issues and doing those things right and getting those things right. And of course, the 5th house has to do with knowledge and understanding and spiritual techniques and the creative intelligence, creative ambition, and any creative projects, relationships with your children, and investments. So 2 weeks ago, there was that new moon. So it began a new cycle in that house. And now we're coming up to the full moon in the 11th. Now, the 11th house has to do with gains, just gains across the board, any type of gains. It is a wealth house. It usually means gains around the career because it's the second from the career, or it's a succedent house from the 10th house. And all succedent houses give a gain of something, okay? So the second house is the gain from you as an individual, which is all of your possessions, everything you own, things like that, okay? So the second house from the 10th is the 11th house, and that is the gain from the career. But it really means all types of gains. So it can mean a promotion or a raise, but it can also mean being recognized for a job well done, winning awards, getting respect and recognition, within your chosen field. All right. It also has to do with long-term projects. Okay. Something you're sacrificing for, that you're working towards, that is a long-term goal or to fulfill a long-term desire. And for the 11th house, we work for it, we sacrifice for it. There's some things in life that we have to give up because we want this long-term goal. And that is what the 11th house also means. Now, because there is the moon eclipsed here, this means something, there is some type of fulfillment or realization. There can be an event that triggers this fulfillment around a long-term goal that you're working towards or a long-term desire you want to satisfy, or around gains in general. And since the fifth house is connected to investments, it can be around some of your investments, okay? Uh, and it will have a polarity, or it will have a connection to the fifth house, to your creative drive, to your intelligence and applying your intelligence in the real world. That's a big fifth house type of thing. It can also have to do with any clients or students you may have. So if you're a person who has clients or students, it can be this full moon will have a gain, a long-term goal connected to clients or students, or higher education, or relationships with your children. All right. So it activates that polarity, this full moon. Now, also, the 11th house is any groups you belong to, any social networks you're part of, your friendship circle and friends. And it looks as if there will be some endings with one of these people, or in a group situation you may belong to, abrupt endings. Okay. And that's due to the fact that Saturn is conjoined the moon, or the eclipsed moon, and it's conjoined because it's in the same sign. It is not within orb in the Western astrology aspects, but it is within the same sign. And in Vedic astrology, that's considered to be conjunct. It's something called Yuti. Okay. So Saturn is influencing this full moon, and there can be an abrupt ending with one of your friends, not with a close friend, not with a close friend that you consider to be family. That's more like the second house, but with something in your friendship circle. Okay. And that can be very abrupt. The reason is because of Saturn, but also because from this eclipsed moon, there you have in the foundational houses, those are the 1, 4, 6, and 8. And in the eighth house, there is Mars. And Mars in the eighth house, both of those things brings things to an abrupt end. Okay. And Saturn brings an end. It doesn't necessarily, isn't necessarily abrupt, but Mars ends things it's in the eighth house from this lunar eclipse in your 11th. Okay. And then there's some things that you have to walk through. This is very important for a Taurus rising to succeed. There's some things you have to work through to succeed in 11th house, or get the fulfillment from the 11th house that you're kind of expecting with this lunar eclipse. Now, it's not going to be what you're expecting. It's probably going to be something you are unprepared for, but there are certain things that you have to work through, and that's diplomacy. All right. You have Venus in the sixth from this lunar eclipse. And when Venus is in the sixth house, we have to be the diplomat. We have to be like a third party between two people that may be having issues, or we have issues with other people and we have to reach out and smooth things over. Okay. It is not good to try to battle it. If you try to battle, it will end immediately. It will end very abruptly. All right. And this is again within your social circle, friendship circle. This also includes online. All right. Any groups or, a social network you have online. Okay. Now, in addition, there is some information that you need to move forward towards a long-term goal that you're working towards, or satisfying a long-term desire, or a desire to join a group and make new friends. There's some information that you need that you will receive. Again, it's not information that you were thinking of. It's something outside of you haven't thought of at all. All right. And that is due to the fact of Mercury's aspect onto this lunar eclipse. So you have some pretty good planets. You have two good planets and two malefics influencing this lunar eclipse. And so the lunar eclipse is a fulfillment or a realization or the culmination of what you've been working towards the last 2 weeks. And it's a big one. You'll remember it. It makes a significant impact in that area of life, in the 11th house. And it's not as influential or significant as a solar eclipse, but it's still very highly significant. Okay. And so you'll remember this. And because of the influence of two malefics and two benefics, you're getting kind of a mixed bag, but you're getting the extremes of things. All right. So just remember, you will receive some type of information that you've been looking for related to group situations, related to your friends, related to your peers and colleagues in moving forward in your career or getting their recognition, getting their admiration and validation. Or it will be around something you need to move forward in your long-term goals. Now, when I say long-term goals, that means something like if you're going to medical school or even, just regular college, that is a long-term goal you're working towards. You're sacrificing, having a regular job or a regular income to go to school for years. The 11th house is always more than a year, right? So that's what I mean by a long-term goal, long-term sacrifice. And whatever happens, so as I said, it looks as if there can be abrupt endings. These things will last for a very long time. When it's over with this one, with this lunar eclipse in the 11th house. But whatever you gain from that also lasts for a very long time. And the reason is because of the influence of Saturn. Now, there may be some abrupt endings in a friendship circle or among your peers and colleagues that you actually will feel bad about. You may feel really bad about it. So, because the moon is what they call in the shamed state. It's shamed by Saturn and Rahu together with the moon. You always get that in the solar eclipse if there's a planet with the solar eclipse, but not as much with the lunar eclipse. But in this case, you are getting that because it's Saturn. Okay. And if I wanted to mention anything else, okay. Another thing that you have to work through that you're working on around this lunar eclipse is your self-worth. Because one of those foundational houses, which is the 6th from the lunar eclipse, is Leo, and Venus is there. And Venus has to do with self-worth and diplomacy, like I mentioned before, and finding where you're going to find the value in your emotional connections. You really have to ascertain and discern and gather all the information again around where you're going to find value in your connections with others. Some of those connections are no longer valuable, you will discover, and are not providing you with value. And that is connected to your self-worth. So very intense, a lot happening. This is around 3 days before and 3 days after. There may be an event, but it's the entire 2 weeks after that moon begins to wane and gets ready for the solar eclipse coming up on the 21st, that 2 week period where the moon wanes. You will be integrating all of these events and feelings and information you're getting, integrating it into your environment. You'll be telling other people about it. It will become part of you. It's a very internal type of situation when the moon starts to wane. Okay. When the moon is waxing, when it's getting brighter up until the lunar eclipse, that's when you're building in the outward world around fifth house issues and around 11th house issues. Remember, it's a polarity. So the 11th house also has to do with social or security in social situations. The fifth house is security in yourself, security in your self expression, security in your creative expression. Okay. So those two houses, it's a huge focus the entire month of September. And really, the fifth house is going to be a major focus until the next solar eclipse, which happens in February or March, all right, of 2026. So just keep that in mind. That is a really important axis now for a Taurus rising. Hello, Gemini risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs in your 10th house of Pisces. I'm using whole sign houses in the tropical zodiac. So this is a really important eclipse because it is in your 10th house, and anytime there is an eclipse in an angular house, which is 1, 4, 7, and 10, that usually brings about a lot of life changes, all right, important life changes. And the angular houses all have to do with starting something new. All right. It's all about starting something new. And when there's an eclipse in one of these houses, it usually means there's a delay or there's some type of problems you need to work through to begin something new, some fears you have about it that you have to walk through, that you have to resolve. And the way it starts, the new thing you want to begin is probably not going to be exactly what you envisioned, especially with a lunar eclipse, because you had a new moon 2 weeks prior, okay, in the first degree of Virgo, your fourth house. And your fourth house has to do with feeling good, feeling peace and contentment, your inner world, your inner life, your emotional foundation. It also, on the mundane, it has to do with your house, your land you own, the building of your home, all of those types of things, vehicles, okay? And it also has to do with the relationship with your mother. So you began this new cycle 2 weeks ago, and now the moon is waxing and getting brighter. And as it does so, we start to build new information. We start to build upon our experiences, and we are learning a new thing in this lunation. Every lunation is designed for us to evolve. Okay. And so you're evolving in that area of the fourth house related to all of those things that I just mentioned. Then the moon becomes full and bright, and that is a level of fulfillment, realization. An event can happen that gives you these insights, and that is actually in the 10th house, the opposite house. And the 10th house has to do with our actions, what we do in the world, our outer world. For most people, that is a career. Okay. But it also has to do with just our everyday actions. If you're retired or you just don't have a career for whatever reason, it's what you do all day, your doings. All right. It's also what you're known for. You're known for what you do. That's your reputation and your power and influence in a worldly sense, not in a familial sense, but in a worldly sense. Your ability to lead or have any type of authority. Okay, that's the 10th house. So that full moon there, which is eclipsed, is going to bring about a fulfillment or a realization, or an event will happen that provides a lot of insight. But this event, this fulfillment, the culmination of that prior or last 2 weeks of the waxing moon, you're building up towards a certain result. And that result is dark because the moon is dark. The moon is eclipsed. So that means that what you're expecting isn't going to happen. Something else is going to happen in the realm of your career, in the realm of your power and influence, in the realm of what you do all day. all right, your daily actions. It can also have to do with the relationship with your boss or any type of authority figure or any authority, really, the relationship with you have with the government, in addition to the relationship with your father. So an event can happen around any of those 10th house issues that makes you realize that is kind of the fulfillment of what you began 2 weeks ago about a new cycle in how you feel, your inner world, your home, things like that. And this event or this realization around your career is going to be something that is long term. All right. There are certain things about it that are limiting or that you were hoping for that do not happen. And the reason that is because this moon, this lunar eclipse, is conjoined Saturn. In Vedic astrology, when two planets are in the same sign, they are conjoined. That's called UT. All right. And it's a little different than Western. It's out of orb. Saturn is at the very end of Pisces. So it's not in orb of the moon, but it's in Vedic, it is influencing the moon because they are in the same sign. And that is going to not give you what you want or deny something in the area of the 10th house, maybe something that you wanted to begin something new in the 10th, in your career or new daily activities that you think would make you feel good. Because when we do good, we feel good. That's the polarity of the 4th house. And then when we feel good, we do better actions, and on it goes, right? That's that 4th, 10th house axis. And then, but that whatever it is that you're expecting isn't really going to happen. However, it's still going to give good results. It isn't completely negative at all. You may feel a little bad about it, that whatever you were expecting to happen in your career life or your daily actions or with your relationship with your father or boss or authority or within your reputation isn't going to be what you thought, but it's still beneficial and it's going to last for a very long time. It's going to be long term. Okay. And it'll be beneficial because of the aspect of Jupiter. Jupiter is aspecting this lunar eclipse. And then there's also Mercury aspecting the lunar eclipse. So you are observing. Mercury is the observer. And so you have to observe the environment around you within your career and your daily actions and all the 10th house indications and learn, observe, learn, don't react. Okay. And gather information. Okay, gather the knowledge you need. Mercury's going to give that, especially because Mercury is in Virgo. It's exalted place where Mercury can get a lot of good information. And then the aspect of Jupiter gives luck, gives a certain amount of creative inspiration. Okay, so you have that as well. Then you have the foundational houses of the 6th and 8th from the lunar eclipse. The 6th from the 6th is Venus. Venus is in Leo, so in the 6th from Pisces, and Mars is in the 8th or Libra. When Mars is in the 8th house, that usually means an abrupt ending to something. So expect some kind of abrupt ending, and this is also emphasized by Saturn being there. Saturn does bring about endings, but what is left over lasts for a very long time. Okay? But Mars in the 8th means that something ends abruptly around the career. It doesn't mean your career ends abruptly. I mean, unless there's other things going on in your natal chart that point to that. But abrupt ending in something in the career, a relationship with the father, relationship with the boss. Maybe the boss has a crisis they're going through. The father has a crisis. Abrupt endings to some activities that you usually do every day that people know you do. Okay, that's a big 10th house thing. Other people see you doing something. That's the 10th house. All right, that's why you develop a reputation for something. Now that's that is Mars in the eighth from this lunar eclipse. Venus in the sixth from the lunar eclipse shows what you have to work through to succeed. And that means that you have to work through diplomacy. That's really important. With uh, with connection, work through emotional connections, making emotional connections, work through being a peacemaker. That's a big one when Venus is in the sixth. This can involve people that you work with or with your boss or your father. All right. Work through your self-worth and what is valuable to you. Situations where you can benefit and others can benefit, where you all get value out of a certain situation. So remember, you have to work through Venus to get the most out of this lunar eclipse in your 10th house. You have to be diplomatic. You have to reach out emotionally. You have to see the value, how you get value out of something. You need to get value too. Well, that's most important, but not, it doesn't have to do with, gypping other people or anything like that. It's just, you need to discover the value you can get out of some situation, a 10th house situation that will make you feel good. Remember the fourth house, that polarity. All right. Uh, and very important, and this is something that will make a big impression on you. The next 2 weeks, as the moon begins to wane or get darker, that's a time when all of your knowledge from that waxing phase around the 10th house and the fourth house is incorporated into your psyche, and where it becomes part of your inner world and where you're able to disseminate that knowledge to other people out into your environment, and it becomes part of your unconscious. Lunar eclipses usually last, I mean, the effects of them, because it's usually a powerful effect. What makes it so powerful is the presence of the nodes, the fact that they can eclipse things, and that's right now that's on your fourth and 10th house axis. So you want to start something new, but you're not sure about how to do it. You want to start maybe a new career or new daily activities, and you want to feel good about something. Or it's new relationship with the past. That's the fourth house. Okay. So this eclipse lasts for a very long time. The effects and the insights that you get. Okay. So those are the predictions for Gemini rising for this lunar eclipse. Thank you for watching. Hello, Cancer risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs on September 7th, and it happens in your 9th house of Pisces. I'm using whole sign houses, so that means the sign is the house, and I'm using the tropical zodiac. Okay, so this is very important because you have the 9th house is a lucky house. It's a house of fortune. It's a house of inspiration. It's a house of higher knowledge, philosophy, religion, committing ourselves to something higher than ourselves. Okay, it's a long-term house because it's something that gives us our lives meaning, and it's very, if we commit to it, we feel meaningful, and we feel like we have a purpose. It's a great house. All right, and it's any teachers or mentors. Now, a lunar eclipse is just a full moon that is eclipsed by the Earth. All right, it goes through the Earth's shadow, and that means it's conjoined the nodes. In this case, it's conjoined Rahu, or the North Node. It's also conjoined Saturn. Saturn being there is going to limit or deny some of the things that you were expecting or hoping for, or that you were preparing yourself for. It's not going to be the way you think it is. It's going to be a lot less. All right. But what is there is going to last for a very long time. And it's all around those 9th house indications I just mentioned. So for a Cancer rising, you had a new moon 2 weeks prior in your third house. And so this new moon and lunar eclipse is on that polarity, the third and ninth house polarity. Those are what they call cadent houses or houses of transition, meaning you're transitioning from one thing to the other in this eclipse season. So especially, September 7th and up until the next lunar eclipse, which is September 21st, that happens in Virgo again in your third house. And the effects of the solar eclipse will last until the next solar eclipse. Okay? So a massive focus on your third and your ninth house axis. The houses of transition, that means you're moving from one thing to another, and what you're doing is you're taking the essence, you're taking all of your knowledge, everything you've learned, all of your experience from one thing and bringing that into something new you want to do. You're not just starting from scratch. Okay? That's what transitioning is. And so the third house, when you had that new moon 2 weeks prior, that was around learning something new or gathering knowledge and information about something new. It's the house of apprenticeship. It's the house of practice makes perfect, learning a skill, honing a skill. Okay. It also has to do with courage and self-promotion and marketing, advertising, social media to promote a business or yourself, whatever, to reach as many people as you can. And that was the beginning of something new. And now, the third house is also experimenting, seeing what works for you, gathering the knowledge. Is this going to work? Um, I want to try things out and see what is going to support me as an individual. So the moon begins to wax and get brighter and brighter, and now it's in the ninth house. And we have the eclipse, and it's like, ooh, it's like, here is your result. Here is what the fulfillment you got, or that you're going to get from that new moon that was in your third house. So it will be an event around any of those ninth house issues. And you're thinking that I want to start something new, but I'm not starting from scratch. I'm bringing in all of my knowledge from something else and my experience from something else, and I'm transforming it into something new. And now I want to see, is this worth believing in and committing to? Is this going to give my life meaning? Is this going to give me purpose? It can be an event around your religion or spiritual path or a teacher you may have. Higher education, also traveling to a foreign country. Anyway, it's going to be limited. It's not going to be what you think it is. It's unforeseen, unanticipated. Because it's Saturn, it's going to make it very sparse, or it's not going to give what you are expecting or hoping for. But what it does give is very long term. Okay. And there is an amount of luck and grace behind it. There is an amount of creative drive and ambition because there's the aspect of Jupiter. And there's also an element of this is fun. I enjoy this. I want to learn about it. I want to investigate it. The aspect of Mercury. Okay. Something may end abruptly around a relationship with a teacher, around your belief system. Around, you may have to cut a trip short if you're traveling in a country or traveling for purposes of spiritual, like going to a pilgrimage, going on a pilgrimage to a sacred place, or just going somewhere to immerse yourself in the culture and learn about it and enjoy yourself and have fun. Okay. You may have to cut that short, or something about it can be cut short because of Mars being in the 8th from the lunar eclipse. Also, there's something you need to work through to succeed in the ninth house in this lunar eclipse to get the most you can, the most fulfillment out of it. And that's Venus. All the indications of Venus. That means diplomacy, making connections emotionally, making emotional connections, um, finding value in something, making sure that you get value out of a spiritual path, out of committing to something long term and putting all of yourself into it, which is all in the realm of the ninth house. Finding the value in following an inspiration, okay? Finding value in making a transition. Those are the things you need to work through because Venus is in the sixth, and the sixth and eighth are foundational houses. The sixth and the eighth from any planet, even in your birth chart, it's going to show you to get the fullest expression of that planet. You have to look in the sixth and the eighth. The sixth is what you have to work through to succeed. The eighth is the longevity of something and the mystery that you need to unravel. Okay. So that's why the sixth house and the eighth house are the foundational houses. And that's why you need to work through Venetian things. And that's why certain things can abruptly end, or you need to cut things off abruptly because Mars is in the eighth and Mars is cutting things away. And Mars is in the eighth house is also cutting things away and transforming them very quickly. And it could be something really simple, like, you don't want to take a class anymore, so you cut it off, right? You don't want to engage with a professor or a teacher, or you may listen to a teacher, spiritual teacher on YouTube, and you don't want to do it anymore, or they decide they are going to leave, right? They're not going to make any more videos, whatever it is. But it really has to do with this lunar eclipse is very much around following something that inspires you, following something that gives your life meaning. And you're going to think it's certain things because you were experimenting and trying things out with that new moon in the third house, but it's not going to be what you expect. Okay. Now, a lunar eclipse, it lasts for a while, or the effects are prominent in your life for a few months, actually. And then, but the major time is that 2 weeks after the lunar eclipse, when the moon begins to wane on its way to the next new moon, which in this case will be a solar eclipse. So as the moon begins to wane, you incorporate that event that happened, or that fulfillment or realization that you received during the lunar eclipse, you incorporate it into your inner world. That is the purpose of the waning moon. The waxing moon is what you build in the outside world and all the events and situations that you meet with. And as the moon begins to wane, now you're going to incorporate it. You're going to make it part of you. You will disseminate that knowledge around your environment, and you will tell others about it, and it will become part of your unconscious. That's the purpose of a lunation. That's the lunation cycle. But the lunations, when there are eclipses, other words, eclipse season, are the most important ones. Those are the granddaddies. They set the tone until the next eclipse, from solar eclipse to solar eclipse. The lunar eclipses are less important than the solar eclipses, but they're still very important because they give a certain amount of fulfillment and a really big realization. And this one's really important because it's being influenced by slow-moving planets of Saturn and Jupiter. Hello, Leo risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs in your 8th house of Pisces on September 7th. And I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. Okay, so since it's a lunar eclipse, it's a full moon that's being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. All right, and it is with Rahu, or the north node of the moon. And because it is a lunar eclipse, there is a certain amount of fulfillment, there's a certain amount of realization. There's something that you're working towards during this lunation, and that it would have to do with the 2nd and 8th house axis. Okay, that's an axis of security. Right now, you have the nodes in an axis of security. And that means that you're trying to find security in your finances and your material prosperity. All right, your everything you own, everything you possess, everything that you are responsible for, that's the second house. And that's where that lunation was 2 weeks ago. That's where the new moon was. So you begin a new cycle around second house things. Okay. Now the moon has traveled for 2 weeks, getting brighter and brighter until it reaches its fullest position in the eighth house of emotional security, security in your esteem through other people. So the eighth house has to do with other people's value. That's why it rules other people's money or benefiting from other people's resources, and especially the partner's resources. Okay. So there's a lunar eclipse there. It is with Saturn. That can mean that there's a loss in, if you're in a relationship or you're married, it can result in some loss of responsibility from your partner or with your partner. Your partner loses some of their responsibility, or they lose a possession rather rapidly. Okay, because of Saturn, the influence of Saturn being there, and also the influence of Mars, because Mars is in what they call a foundational house from this lunar eclipse. Things can end abruptly around something that your partner is responsible for or something that they own, one of their possessions. If you are not in a relationship, this can have to do with something that you gain from the public or the public's resources. That includes any type of government assistance, any type of scholarship, loan, grant, inheritance, insurance payout from a lawsuit, any of those things. That is all within the realm of the eighth house. This can indicate there's a loss in something like that, or it does not, there's too many problems with it. You can't move forward with it. Because it is Saturn, Saturn always gets rid of what no longer belongs in our life. What happens is we want something or we're thinking about something, but Saturn denies it, but it does not deny all of it. The reason that is because of the influence or the aspect of Jupiter onto this lunar eclipse. Jupiter is aspecting with a full aspect, a planetary ninth house aspect. And in Western astrology, that would be a trine. In Vedic astrology, when two planets are in the same sign, they are considered to be conjunct. They are called UT. It doesn't matter how far away they are. Okay. Just that's why Saturn is influencing this eclipse so strongly. And so you have the aspect of Jupiter. You also have the aspect of Mercury. Jupiter and Mercury are both manifesting planets. They give things, they make things happen. Mercury is also aspecting almost fully. Okay. So you are going to get something. Either you'll get something from other people's resources, or your partner will be able to hold on to something or some of their resources. And whatever that is very long term. And there will be a lot of luck with those things. Okay. Now, if you are not receiving some kind of benefit from the public either, you're not in a relationship, you're not receiving or not benefiting from other people's resources in any way, then this can also have to do with psychology and therapy. The eighth house is very much a house of going deep within the psyche to heal it. And it has to do, anytime we go to a psychologist or, go to group therapy, any of that is all within the realm of the eighth house. We're trying to understand our motivations around something. We're trying to understand why we sabotage ourselves. We're trying to change. We're trying to transform our energy. That is the eighth house. The eighth house is about the movement of energy. Everything is energy. And if we're putting energy into negative self-talk and bad habits and wanting to escape, we can just take that energy and put it somewhere else. If we are putting our energy in being angry all the time, being paranoid and lashing out at people, we can also move that energy into a different area of our life and put it into something else. And the eighth house is what shows us how to do that. So when you have a lunar eclipse there, you're expecting some type of fulfillment or using therapy to fulfill a desire you had 2 weeks prior when there was that new moon in your second house, which is your self-worth. Growing your self-worth or contributing to your self-worth is done through eighth house indications of transferring emotional psychic energy or just transforming your life. So this lunar eclipse will have to do with that. Again, you will get rid of certain things around psychology or the way you try to heal your psyche. But what is left over is very important, will last a very long time because of the influence of Jupiter and Saturn. There will be opportunities from these things. Okay? Also, some things can end very abruptly around, like I said, the Saturn will make certain things end or will deny certain things around all of those eighth house issues I just mentioned. But Mars is in a foundational house from the lunar eclipse. It's in the eighth house from the lunar eclipse. And that's a foundational house. Mars in the eighth usually ends things very abruptly. So if you were getting any assistance, you were getting a scholarship, you were getting a grant, you were getting an insurance payout, whatever it is, that can end very abruptly. Going to therapy can end for some reason. Your therapist goes on vacation or whatever, all right? Your partner's resources come to an end. A responsibility your partner has comes to an end very abruptly. That is the influence of the foundational house of Mars influence, all right? Mars is in the eighth in Libra from this lunar eclipse in Pisces. What you have to work through to succeed with this lunar eclipse, which will last for a very long time, okay? It's very influential in your life. What you have to work through is Venus, which is diplomacy, reaching out to people and making connections where you both benefit. Okay? Venus rules Libra, the scales, weighing the value of something in setting up win-win situations. That's the best way to use Venus, especially when it's in the sixth from the lunar eclipse. Okay? Also, self-worth. Venus is self-worth. This is a big self-worth eclipse season for a Leo rising, but also it has to do with that the entire time the moon's nodes are in your second and eighth house, that polarity. And as the moon begins to wane or get darker after the lunar eclipse, you're going to incorporate what you've realized, the experience you had, the event that occurred around eighth house indications. You incorporate that into your psyche. It becomes part of you. You share it with other people. It becomes part of your environment. Okay. And in the last couple of days before the solar eclipse on the 21st, that's when it becomes part of your unconscious and you don't need to think about it anymore. That is the purpose of lunations. And eclipses just put a huge exclamation mark on lunations and full moons because they're with the nodes and the nodes are our evolution. So those are the predictions for a Leo rising for this solar or lunar eclipse on September 7th. Hello, Virgo risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs in the sign of Pisces on September 7th. I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. All right, so this is really important for Virgos, extremely important because eclipse season is activating your first and seventh axis. Those are houses of beginning new things, okay? Anytime you have angular houses activated, it's all about beginning something new, completely new, brand new. You're not taking anything from the past and transforming it into something new. You're doing something completely new, okay? And so for a Virgo, there was a lunation. There was a lunation, and then there's going to be a solar eclipse on September 21st. And there was a lunation, I think it was August 22nd, I believe it was. But two new moons, because a solar eclipse is just a new moon, in your first house within a month, okay, or thereabouts. That's highly significant. That means you're going through a massive transformation in your life, okay? You're beginning anew. You're starting a new cycle around you, also around your path in life, okay? The first house is a house of an impulse towards something. It's an impulse. You're driven towards something. You're pulled towards something. You're going to walk that path. It's a house of dharma, of inspired action, okay? And then the fifth house, which is another Dharma house, is the continuation of that impulse into something concrete, into something that builds your kingdom, into your consistent self-expression. Okay. I'm getting on a tangent here, but it's so important for a Virgo to realize how these eclipses in your first house change something about the path you're walking. Okay. It can change your appearance. It can change your health that shows up on your appearance. It can change even personality characteristics, your comfort and pain. Okay. That means within the body, what's comfortable, what's painful to you, emotionally and physically. So why I'm saying this is because a lunar eclipse is a mid-cycle of a lunation. Even though it's an eclipse, it's still mid-cycle. It's not, a lunar eclipse is not as important as a solar eclipse, which you will have also in your first house on the 21st. But it's still pretty important because it's the culmination of something. It's the fulfillment. There's some fulfillment there. There's some realization around something in regards to your path in life, who you are, you know, how you want to build your life, what phenomena you want to meet with, your attitude, your worldview, all that kind of stuff. Okay. And that began a new cycle. And then the moon started to wax and get brighter and brighter. Now it is going to be full and eclipsed or dark. And that means you have building towards something, an understanding of yourself, a new path in life. And then an event will happen in the seventh house. Okay. That can be around your relationship. If you're in a relationship, something happens with your partner, they can have some health problems. The reason I'm saying this is because Saturn is conjoined this lunar eclipse. Even though it is very far away in degrees, it's still conjoined. In Vedic astrology, if two planets are in a sign, they are conjoined. It's called UT. Okay, it's more powerful than other aspects. And so Saturn is aspecting that moon. Saturn usually gives health problems. So there can be some health issues with your partner if you're in a relationship or you're married. Or there can be something around your relationship life that causes some problems, causes some delays. And there's also something like an outlook or getting your needs met. You may be ashamed even to express your needs to your partner, your emotional needs, and because the moon is getting what they call shade. Okay. And because that is happening, that makes you realize something about yourself because it's all part of that polarity of the first and seventh house. And you begin something new around yourself. And so an event can happen that makes you feel that way, or the partner can be ill, or both can happen. Now, if you're not in a relationship, then you have the seventh house has to do with business transactions. If you own a business, if you're starting a business, if you're just trying to get some business where, you are the only person doing business transactions with the public or somebody else, then you can meet with some obstacles around those things, or something that you were expecting doesn't happen. Something else happens and that you were not expecting, that was unanticipated. And that thing is what is going to last a very long time because of the conjunction of Saturn. Saturn gets rid of what no longer belongs, and what is left over belongs. What is left over is long term. Okay. And you will benefit from what's left over. You will get information. You will have opportunities. You will have luck with what is left over in the business sense. And it will last for a very long time. Why? because that lunar eclipse is being planetary aspected by Jupiter. In the Western system, it's being trined by Jupiter very strongly. It's getting full aspect from Jupiter. Okay. So there is luck and grace. There is a silver lining on this lunar eclipse. It's also being aspected by Mercury. The moon, or Mercury is a friend to the moon. So that means that you get opportunities, you get the information you need to move forward in your business, but only after there's some loss or some problems. Okay. Also, the seventh house, if you're not, don't do any business transactions at all, you're not in a relationship, you don't want to be in a relationship, you're not looking for one, in other words, then this has to do with how you relate to the public. So it has to do with just relating to other people in general. What you want to share with other people, what you don't want to share, what you want to compromise with other people on. It's also if you're in the public eye or you're a social worker, you work with the public in any capacity, you're a performer or an artist, then there's an event around, dealing with the public or just interacting with other people that you feel you cannot express what you need from them. All right. If you are performing or anything like that, you can be stopped, or there can be certain elements that don't meet your needs that you are disappointed with. Okay. I'm not going to lie about that. Right. After that, though, you do carry on something, some insight, some realization, and there is something about it that gives you luck in the future and that gives you opportunities and that you learn from. All right. There's other opportunities, just not the ones you thought would be there. Okay. If you are dating, like say you like someone and you have a crush on someone and you're expecting something to happen with them, it's probably not going to happen. But there may be something else that comes, like somebody else, their friend or whatever, or they can't acknowledge you right now for whatever reason. But there is something left over. There is something there that is a promise that can give you what you want later on in a different way. As that moon begins to wane the next 2 weeks, you will understand what that is. And that event that caused some loss or some disappointment actually prompts you to change internally in some way. Okay. Or to have a different attitude about something, or decide to move on a different path. Now, this can also happen if you are in public. Let's say you go to a concert or you're eating in a restaurant, you're in a public place. An event can happen in this public place that is a little surprising, and it's something that is, there's an element of, oh, that sucks, But then there's something else that happens within that event that is going to give you luck and make you realize a lot of things and actually give you opportunities. Okay. Or that you learn from in a way that gives you opportunities or helps you develop or gives you more information that you need, gives you the information that you needed. All right. Now, if you're somebody, this is probably not a lot of people, but if you're someone who lives in a foreign country from your natal country, or you're planning on a foreign trip, there can be delays around that, definitely, because of that aspect of Saturn. It can be, if you're waiting on a flight, that can be canceled. Going through the airport is a huge pain, whatever. There's going to be some problems. And that is because Saturn is shaming the moon. Saturn is conjoining the moon. All right. But ultimately, it all works out after you get over that Saturnian hump. Okay? It definitely does. And you'll remember this. You'll remember this event, this relationship event, this public event, this traveling to a foreign country event, this business event. You'll remember it. It will make a big impression on you. So, and especially during the next 2 weeks, you'll see that how it changed you and how you have learned from it and integrated it. Okay? So those are the predictions for Virgo for this lunar eclipse. Hello, Libra risings. All right, so we have a lunar eclipse coming up on September 7th in the sign of Pisces. In your sixth house, I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. So a lunar eclipse is a full moon that is being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. Okay, so it has many of the connotations of a full moon, but it's more important and it is more impactful because it is with the nodes. The nodes are influencing. And also because a full moon is always the fulfillment of something, the realization of something. There's an event around the house placement of the full moon that makes you think, wow, okay, I learned something from this. I got a certain amount of fulfillment. However, it's something that is unanticipated. That is a bit of a surprise that you are not prepared for. Something kind of chaotic, okay, unpredictable, especially because it is with Saturn and the North Node, or Rahu. Saturn and Rahu together cause a lot of unpredictability. And this is going to be around sixth house issues, which has to do with health, okay? Health issues, has to do with debt, paying off debt or going into debt, okay? And that can mean there is a delay in something, there's problems with something. This usually you can reveal some type of health issue that is surprising to you, okay? Because of that Saturn Rahu influence on the moon. It has to do with work in general, how you work, your work ethic, problems to solve, all right? Paying attention to details, not letting anything get by you, learning through step-by-step process, not breaking the rules. Okay, that's the sixth house. And you can feel overwhelmed with work. You can feel like work is not meeting your needs. You can throw up your hands in frustration with this lunar eclipse, something at work. You can have people working against you because the sixth house has to do with enemies and competitors and people who can benefit from a situation as much as you can. All right. And it is a mid-cycle from what happened 2 weeks prior. On August 22nd, there was a new moon in your 12th house. So you are beginning a new cycle around 12th house issues. So these are very much linked. Okay. The main focus, even with this lunar eclipse, the main focus is that lunation, that new moon. You're going to have another solar eclipse in your 12th house on September 21st. This is really putting an exclamation mark on your 12th house. And the sixth house, the polar opposite, will help you realize things about the 12th. And that is letting go of things that need to be let go of, getting away from worldly concerns, okay? Volunteer work, giving in charity, allowing the wealth to flow through you. All right? That's the 12th house. The 12th house can actually give wealth if you give away, if you give of your time and energy. It doesn't even have to be money, okay? The 12th house has to do with being in a different state of consciousness, okay? It's not the methods you use to get there, it's actually being there. All right, so that state before you fall asleep, you're almost asleep, you're in between the state of awake and sleep. It's the twilight, your particular twilight time. And when you wake up, You want to imprint into your consciousness whatever it is you're trying to manifest in your life during those twilight times, your personal twilight times, which is that 12th house state. It can also be the state you reach in meditation or prayer, whatever it is, okay? Also in dream state. So if you're a spiritual practitioner that really likes to rely on that, the 12th house is moksha. The 12th house is total freedom, okay? It's the third of the truth trine. But you also have to work. You also have to get in there and get into the grind and figure it out. And so this lunar eclipse causes an event that you need to pay attention to, that you need to work through. Okay. And that can be due to your body and your health. That can be due to debt. That can be due to battling someone else, you know, metaphorically, not physically. And also this polarity between the 12th and the 6th house, these are houses of transition. Okay. They're cadent houses. That means that you're taking something from that you already know, that you're good at, that you've already done, that you've perfected, so to speak. And you are taking what you need from that and moving into something else. Okay. Starting something else, but not from scratch, from what you already know. So transitioning is difficult when you have the moon's nodes moving through that 6th and 12th axis, which is emphasized by the eclipses. Okay. And so the 12th house is the transition into a new you because your unconscious is changing. Your idea of who you are is changing because the 12th house is all about ego death. And it does it little by little. Some people it does it faster, some people it does it slower. But the lunar eclipse is going to activate an event around those 6th house indications that I was saying that makes you realize something about the 12th. They're connected. This lunar eclipse is going to give after it takes away or after there's a delay, after you don't get your needs met, you're kind of disappointed. It will give. There is opportunities after Saturn gets rid of what no longer belongs. Saturn is influencing this eclipse because it is conjoined the eclipse. Any planets in the same sign are conjoined in Vedic astrology. That is called UT. Okay. Planetary aspects are different, but if they're in the same sign, they are influencing each other. So Saturn is going to take away, but what is left over is going to last for a very long time, and there will be opportunities from those things. There will be luck and grace. There will be creative vision. There will be information that you've been looking for that you finally get. That can be around your health. That can be around a way to pay off your debt or to overcome something, overcome an enemy. The 6th house is what we need to work through to succeed. It's an Artha house. It's a house of wealth. We work through it, we succeed. Now, the foundational houses from this eclipse have Venus and Mars there. And that means that what we need to work through to, get the benefit of the 6th house, which is self-improvement and self-restraint, self-discipline, that's the 6th house, and overcome our enemies. What we need to work through is Venus, because Venus is in the 6th from this lunar eclipse. So that's called a foundational house, and that operates from every planet, not just the ascendant. So Venus is diplomacy, kindness, manners, decorum, social etiquette, connecting with others, connecting emotionally with others, sharing with other people, compromising with other people. That is all Venus. So we have to work through that for Libra risings to get the benefit of this lunar eclipse, which you really won't realize until it starts to wane, since The moon will start to wane the next 2 weeks after September 7th. And that's when you start to incorporate and integrate the realization, the knowledge of that lunar eclipse. Okay. So you have to work through that Venus. You have to figure out the mystery of Mars. Mars is in the eighth, and another foundational house. Mars is in Libra, the eighth from the lunar eclipse. Mars is self-discipline, self-restraint, self-transformation through sheer will. Okay? Mars is the planet that fixes problems. And Mars can end things very abruptly. Like if you do have some health issue or you're planning on getting surgery or getting something burned off, things like that, that's in the realm of Mars. Even going to the dentist and having them poke and prod in your teeth and gums, that is Mars. Anything that has to do with needles, cutting things off, burning things off. And if it has to do, if it's in the sixth, or sorry, the eighth from the lunar eclipse, and the lunar eclipse is in the sixth, it can have to do with your health. Even somebody sticking a needle in your arm, that is Mars. All right. It can defeat enemies, even, especially with Saturn. Saturn is the planet, when it goes through the sixth, you can defeat your enemies. But especially now, once you figure out the mystery of Mars, which is using your will to restrain, using your will to improve, and your self-discipline. Okay? So there's a huge focus for Libra risings on that nodal axis, on that 6-12 axis, houses of transition. The 12th house is getting away from worldly concerns, total relaxation. You're going to have an eclipse on the 20th, or a solar eclipse on the 21st. So it's really focusing on that 12th. So you have to understand what the 12th indicates. The 12th is just letting go of false ideas about who we need to be, who we are. All right. It's freedom. It's, let it go, let go of the anger, the resentment, the need to be validated, whatever. So those are the predictions for Libra rising for this lunar eclipse. Thank you for watching. Hello, Scorpio risings. All right, so we have a lunar eclipse in the sign of Pisces on September 7th. This is your fifth house, and I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. All right, so a lunar eclipse is a full moon that is eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. All right. So it's a full moon, and there's an element of fulfillment there. There's an element of realization, a culmination of something, knowledge gained. There can be an event, okay, around the fifth house, which has to do with your children, the relationship with your children, your investments, your self-expression, any creative projects that you have going, and how you apply your knowledge in the world. All right, it's a big knowledge house. It also has to do with wealth, fortune, getting your fortune, especially from investments. And the fifth house is also spiritual techniques you use or methods you use to get closer to the source. Any type of technique, prayer, moving energy in the body, whatever. So this is actually linked because it is a full moon. Okay, that's what a lunar eclipse is. That is dark. So of course, there's something unforeseen about these things, about this event that can happen, and something you're not prepared for that you have to kind of adjust to in a way that can be a little unsettling. And there can be some loss around these things, definitely, because Saturn is there as well. Lots of chaos, lots of unpredictability. That's what Saturn and Rahu cause, and the moon is there with Saturn and Rahu, or the North Node. And even though Saturn is very far away from the moon, it's not in orb in the Western sense, but in Vedic astrology, when two planets are in the same sign, They are UT or they are conjoined, no matter how far away they are. All right. And whenever Saturn and the node are with another planet, they shame that other planet. So what that means is you don't really get your needs met around fifth house indications, because the moon is the planet where we get our needs met and where we adapt to things and situations in the world. That's why some eclipses, can be, people fear them in the ancient world because something unexpected happened and there can be a loss around that. However, there's also gain. This is not a total loss eclipse. Okay, it is not, because it is being fully aspected by Jupiter from Cancer. So that means from Jupiter's exalted position, Jupiter is looking at this lunar eclipse. Okay, it's called Drishti. And it is a planetary aspect of Jupiter, but it's also a trine aspect in Western astrology, but it is exact. Okay. Then we have the aspect of Mercury from Mercury's exalted position in Virgo. Both Jupiter and Mercury are planets of manifestation and opportunity. So whatever is lost, but what's left over is long-term and provides opportunities, provides luck, grace, a creative drive, creative ambition and knowledge and purpose, inspiration, knowledge, and gathering all the information, gathering all the facts you need around fifth house indications. Okay? All of those things that I just mentioned. Getting consistent in your path in life, getting solid in building your kingdom. That's the fifth house. The fifth house is a house of Dharma, a Dharma house, meaning inspired action. It's inspiring. You use your knowledge that's individual to you, unique to you in an authentic way, and apply it authentically in the world. It's a house of knowledge. And again, fortune. So, like I said, this lunar eclipse is connected to the lunation that happened on August 22nd, I believe it was, in the first degree of Virgo, which is your 11th house. So there is a polarity here. The 5th and the 11th houses are houses of security. 2 weeks prior, you had a lunation in the 11th house, which has to do with long-term goals, working towards satisfying a long-term desire. When I say long-term, I mean more than a year. It takes more than a year, and you have to consistently put in and sacrifice to reach this goal. Okay? So you began a new cycle around those things. And you also began a new cycle around your social activities, your friendship circle, your peers and colleagues, getting validation and admiration from those people, being validated by them, getting respect and recognition in general. That's the 11th house. So you began a new cycle around these things. Then it is a house of social security. Okay, like being secure in your social situation and in social situations, being secure in group situations, being secure in your career accomplishments. Okay, the 11th house is a house of winning awards, going to fundraisers and being asked to speak, things like that. Okay. And then that full moon comes around and you're expecting some type of fulfillment or outcome or realization around fifth house issues that's going to make you see or have a better perspective on the 11th house. But what you're expecting to happen, what you are working towards, planning on happen, that can be with, your own creative ambition or creative projects, relationships with your children and students or clients. If you're someone who has clients or students, that's the fifth house too. There can be an unexpected happening with one of these people that causes some loss. But there is a silver lining, because you get opportunities and in grace and luck, fortune from whatever is left over. Okay. The fifth house is a house of security and self-expression. They are what they call succeeded houses. They're the second from an angle. They're the gain of those houses. So the 11th house is the second from the 10th, which is the career and our actions, our daily actions. The fifth is the second from the fourth house, which is our inner happiness and contentment, our past, everything that has happened in the past that makes us who we are. So the fifth house is the gain from that, meaning it is our creative imagination, how we express ourselves. We express ourselves based on how we feel inside, who we are inside, right? So that it's going to destabilize your security in both of those things, this lunar eclipse. But it's designed to do that because the nodes are moving through those houses, and the nodes are our evolution. Eclipses come along to put an exclamation mark on those nodes, okay? Saying, hey, pay attention here, pay attention to these nodes, right? And where they are and what they're trying, what you're learning from them, and all of those kinds of things. Now, so you will remember this. Now, what you need to work through to succeed, again, there is going to be some success over the waning period, the next 2 weeks, and just in general for the next few months, because eclipses have a strong impact, okay? But what you need to work through is Venus, because Venus is in the sixth house from this eclipse. It's in Leo. And the sixth and eighth houses are foundational houses. The sixth and eighth house from anything, from any planet, from the ascendant and from any planet. It means, what do I need to work through to get success and to, understand what's happening in my life? And that's Venus, which is diplomacy, sharing your feelings, emotionally connecting with other people, understanding what you want from a relationship and not just romantic relationships. Okay. And then also self-worth. That's also Venus. Okay. Trade. Venus rules what is valuable. Understanding what is valuable, and based on what you find valuable, making a choice. And it's a choice that is long term. I also forgot to mention the fifth house is the house of romance. It's a big relationship house. It's just enjoying the whole process of being with someone else. Okay? How you co-create together, how you enjoy each other, all of that. That is the fifth house. So that is also, there can be some disappointment around that, all right? But there is a little smidgen of something that you need to find that will reveal itself during this eclipse. That's like, wow, okay, I can stay with this and get opportunities from this and be inspired by it, all of those things, okay? But just saying, there is either delays or some really strong problems where you cannot surmount those problems if there's romance, and you just have to not engage for a while. All right. But it really is going to make you realize certain things around your romantic life and any other fifth house issue. So those are the predictions for a Scorpio rising for this lunar eclipse. Hello, Sagittarius risings. Okay, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs on September 7th in the sign of Pisces. I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. All right, so the lunar eclipse, it's a lunar eclipse. That's a full moon that is being eclipsed by the Earth or in the Earth's shadow. And there's a certain amount of fulfillment. There's a gain from a full moon, but the gain during a lunar eclipse is something that you're not expecting, that is unforeseen and unanticipated, and most likely something you're not prepared for. And because a lunar eclipse is connected to the previous new moon that occurred 2 weeks prior, It's a mid-cycle phenomena, so it's part of that lunation that occurred in your 10th house. And it's on the axis of the fourth and 10th house. This has to do with starting something new. Okay, the angular houses are all about beginning something new. There's a certain amount of trepidation, maybe fear around it, anxiety around it, because it's the lunar nodes and it's eclipsing the sun. That'll be on September 21st, and the moon, which is on September 7th. So this is in your fourth house. Now, something can break down in your house because it's old. That's one of the things that can happen around the time of the lunar eclipse, and especially during that 2 weeks after the moon begins to wane after September 2nd or 7th, up until the next lunation, which happens to be the solar eclipse. Okay, something can break down in the house because it's old or on your vehicle. That's how it will manifest in the mundane reality. Uh, and that's because Saturn is influencing this lunar eclipse. Saturn shames the moon. Whenever you get Saturn in a node, whatever planet is with that Saturn node conjunction, it's getting shamed. So the moon is getting shamed during this lunar eclipse. So it's going to be kind of a problem. You'll feel a little bit of anger about it, or some you don't feel good about it, pretty much. However, because of the influence of Jupiter and Mercury, which are two planets of manifestation and opportunity, whatever you're losing or something breaking down in the home or with the vehicle, whatever is, it does give a little bit of promise, and that little bit of promise is going to go a long way. Okay. And Saturn is getting rid of these things because you don't need them anymore. There's too much responsibility around it, and because it doesn't belong in your life anymore. But what is left over is gives opportunity, gives luck, gives a lot of creative drive and ambition, and you get a lot of information around it because of the influences of Mercury and Jupiter. Now, in addition to it affecting something around the building of your home and also your vehicle, it has to do with feeling good, feeling at peace, feeling contentment, having a strong emotional foundation, and feeling good about the past. This can also trigger an event that makes you remember something in the past. Someone from your past can show up into your life that can trigger some memory that you'd rather forget. But something really good comes out of it. That's the important thing to remember. That is the influence of Jupiter and Mercury, again, on this eclipse. In 2 weeks prior, in that new moon cycle, you began something new around your career, your relationship with your boss or your father, your own power and authority, or your worldly influence, or your daily actions. If you don't have a career, some people don't have a career, they're retired or for whatever reason. And the 10th house has to do with our daily actions, what we do all day and what we're known for, our reputation. So for a Sagittarius ascendant, you had a new moon 2 weeks prior, and you will also have a solar eclipse, which is the big one, on September 21st. So there's a huge focus on your 10th house. New beginnings around career and all of those things I just mentioned, your relationship with authority, your own authority and leadership ability. Okay. But during this lunar eclipse, so something new began around all of those 10th house issues 2 weeks prior. And then with the lunar eclipse, the moon waxes and gets brighter and brighter. And then you expect to feel good. You expect to have some emotional stability, emotional security. But because the moon is eclipsed, it's not there, meaning it's something that you're not prepared for, that you didn't see, unforeseen. Okay. And the influence of Saturn is a melancholy influence. You can feel some lack, emotional lack around maybe your relationship with your mother, or just your overall emotional state, your inner world. But it's designed to do that because you're designed to purge some of those feelings from the past. Now, this is on an inner level, the inner meaning of the fourth house, rather than the building of your home or your vehicle. Okay. So you have to let go of some of those memories or resolve them in your psyche or resolve some of the feelings about the relationship with your mother or a mother figure. And then what is left over is the good stuff. That is Saturn's job. Saturn is designed to get rid of what no longer belongs and what does not support us and what is not a part of us anymore. When it's in houses of moksha or liberation, total freedom, the emotional water houses 4, 8, and 12, it's difficult because we have to let go of things on an inner level. But is what is left over we can really work with because of that influence of Jupiter and Mercury. Also, what you need to work through to succeed is Venus, because Venus is in a foundational house from this lunar eclipse. It's in the sixth from the Pisces lunar eclipse. It's in Leo. So you have to work through Venetian things, your self-worth, how you connect with other people, what you're willing to share with other people, the value that you bring to other people and what they bring to you, how you share. Rules the scales of Libra, which is what is most valuable. How can I create win-win situations? The other thing too is diplomacy. It's important to work through diplomacy, be a peacemaker, either between two people or between you and someone else. That's how Venus operates when it's influenced by the sixth house and it's in the sixth house from this lunar eclipse. So that's really important. Also, another thing about around the home, because Mars is in the eighth, another foundational house from this lunar eclipse. Mars in the eighth breaks things. You can have problems of something breaking in the home. You can have electrical problems in the home. Okay. Also, whatever Saturn brings to an end around fourth house indications, which I was just mentioning, they will end very abruptly and they will trigger self-improvement, self-discipline, and self-restraint. All indications of Mars. When Mars is influencing the fourth or any other water house or emotional house, it has to do with the inner work, the inner meanings of Mars, which is self-restraint, self-improvement, and self-discipline. Okay. So really important. And again, if you're beginning new things, you're beginning new things around what you do, the 10th house, and how you feel, the fourth house. All right. That is what the angular houses do. They begin something brand new. And there's trepidation around it. There is apprehension around it because of the presence of the nodes, and the eclipses are what really activate those things. So you have to walk through certain indications, what I just mentioned, Venus and Mars, especially Venus, that's what you have to work through to begin something new in the realm of the fourth house, in the realm of your inner world, in the realm of your relationship to the past and to your mom or any mother figure. Hello, Capricorn risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs in Pisces on September 7th. I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. All right, so it's a lunar eclipse. That means there's a certain amount of fulfillment and realization. All right, it's a full moon that's being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow, and it is with Rahu and Saturn. Saturn is influencing this lunar eclipse because it is in the same sign of Pisces. And in Vedic astrology, when two planets are in the same sign, they are UT, which just means conjunct. It's a little different in Western where it has to be within orb. They are not within orb in the Western system, but they are still conjunct, okay? And actually Saturn is causing what they call shame to the moon, all right? It's in the shamed state because there's Saturn and Rahu there. So what does this all mean? Well, for a Capricorn rising, 2 weeks prior, so 2 weeks ago, there was a new moon in Virgo in your ninth house. A new cycle began around ninth house indications. And now the moon has come around, it's been waxing, and now it is full, but it's eclipsed. It's dark. What you were expecting, the fulfillment you were expecting, the outcome you were expecting doesn't happen. Something else happens that you weren't expecting. What this in the realm of third house issues. Okay. Now, the third and ninth houses, they are connected in this lunation. They are a polarity. They are houses of transition. What does that mean? Houses of transition are when you take something from what you've been doing before, you take all of your knowledge, all of your experience, all of your wisdom, what you have learned, you take the essence of something that was in the past, and then you transition it into something new or transform it into something new. You are not starting from scratch. Okay, you're going from one thing and transitioning into another thing, but you are bringing something that you were doing before into the new thing that you're going to begin. All right, that's very important to realize because the nodes are activating your houses of transition. That new moon was in your ninth house. So you began a new cycle around, what is inspiring to you, following your inspiration, your true inspiration based on who you are as an individual, starting a new cycle around religion, philosophy, spirituality, teachers in this regard, mentors, people you look up to, starting a new cycle around what gives your life meaning, doing something with purpose and meaning, committing to something long term that is purposeful and meaningful in your life. This is huge, okay, for a Capricorn rising. So now in the lunar eclipse in the opposite house, in the third house, the third house has to do with trying things out, experimenting with things, see if they work, making effort. The third house is all about making an effort as opposed to the ninth house, which is believing in something, believing it's all going to work out. The third house is really getting in there, putting all of your energy in there and really trying to make it happen. Okay? Self-effort, experimentation, figuring out what works, gathering all of the information you need. With the ninth house, you're not gathering information anymore. You believe it will work. Okay? So something around the getting the information you need, learning or practicing for something, learning a skill that you can use in your pursuit of your true inspiration, which is the ninth house. But learning that skill, honing that skill, getting to the expert level, that is the third house. Something around that doesn't work out the way you thought it would. There can be an event around your siblings that happens, a loss somehow with your siblings or your neighbors or your coworkers or with people that you hire to do jobs for you. The third house is anyone you hire to do a job for you. If you have a personal assistant, if you have somebody fixing your roof, doing your landscaping, whatever, okay? An event can happen where you lose this person or there's some loss tied to it. That's pretty inevitable because of the influence of Saturn and also because Mars is in a foundational house from the lunar eclipse. It's in the 8th from the lunar eclipse. When that happens, usually something is lost very abruptly. Something is cut out very abruptly. Okay? There can be an event around if you are engaged with the arts in any way, performing arts or visual arts. You're an artist, you are a musician, you're an actor, anything where you perform and you're trying to begin a project or work on a project or practice for something in that area, there can be a culmination or an event where there is a certain amount of loss or delay or there's problems that are really insurmountable, so you let them go. But whatever is left over is long term and provides opportunity. That is very important. That is because of the influence or the aspect of Jupiter through a ninth house influence and Mercury. Mercury and Jupiter are the planets of manifestation and opportunity. They give things. Because they are influencing this lunar eclipse, this lunar eclipse will give, but only after certain things are let go of, certain things are taken away. That's what Saturn does. You will feel a little bad about it. You will, because of the shame on the moon. But what is left over is very long term, will give opportunities, and you'll get lucky. Okay? You have to remember that. This is all connected to all third house types of things, all of those things I was just mentioning. The third house is also athleticism and competition. The sixth house is your actual competitors, but the third house is just competing, just in general. If you enter a contest, if you are, running, doing a race or something like that, that's third house. You probably won't win, all right, if you're a Capricorn rising this time. But whatever comes out of that, whatever is left over from that, the connections you make, the knowledge you gain, you are going to carry that with you into the next time you do that, or it's going to be very beneficial, very lucky for you, and give you opportunities. All right. And remember, transitioning. If you are transitioning from one thing to another, whether it's in your job, your home, the third house is also moving and commuting and traveling. Okay. So there can be some loss around these things or some major changes in these things. And that's only after, you experience some delays and like, oh, I have to take a new route. Or maybe the flight's canceled and we have to move to a different airplane, get on the airplane, you meet somebody that gives you a lot of opportunities, all right? Or that is a benefit to your life in some way. So that's how it works. But because the moon is being eclipsed, it's being influenced by Saturn, expect some problems with it. But that doesn't mean that it's all gone because of those nice influences by Jupiter and Mercury. What's left over gives luck, creativity, opportunities, and knowledge and information, the information that you need due to that influence of Mercury. Hello, Aquarius risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs on September 7th. In your second house of Pisces, I'm using whole sign houses and the tropical zodiac. All right, so it's a lunar eclipse, so there's a certain amount of fulfillment, realization. There can be an event that triggers these things, especially around that second, eighth house axis, okay? Because the lunation or the new moon occurred 2 weeks prior. That starts a new cycle, okay? And that was in your eighth house. Now you have this full moon, which is actually a lunar eclipse. It's a full moon being eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. So it's in your second house. Now, this joins that polarity of the second and the eighth house. And this is the polarity of security. They are succedent houses. They are houses of security. The second house is a house of personal security or financial and material security, security in your responsibilities and being able to manage your life and take care of yourself. That's the second house. And then also security of the eighth house, that's more has to do with emotional security. And especially in regards to other people, whether other people esteem you or not, all right? Because the eighth house has to do with other people's value, being able to show other people their value and they in return show their appreciation for you, okay? And also the eighth house has to do with psychology and especially psychotherapy or any type of therapy to heal the psyche, basically. And to bring those things to the surface, understand your inner motivations. 2 weeks prior, you had a new moon there. And for an Aquarius rising, there's going to be an eclipse also there on September 21st, a solar eclipse. So there's a huge concentration during this eclipse season on your eighth house. and then again on your second for this lunar eclipse. So that just means the lunar eclipse is a culmination of something. There can be an event around a close friend, especially around a family member, around, your responsibilities, your family responsibilities, or around some gain you would thought you would receive, a financial or material gain. And the second house has to do with wealth, but in particular, the wealth that is ours, everything that we own, everything that we are responsible for. It is also our self-worth and how we value ourselves. The eighth house is how other people value us. All right. And so those are really important houses of security. With this lunar eclipse, there can be a loss around a close friend or a family member. The loss of the relationship with them, or some type of loss around them, or some obstacles that you can't overcome, delays with those things, problems with those things. And the reason that is because of the presence of Saturn. Saturn is in Pisces, conjoined this lunar eclipse. And Saturn is also what they call shaming the moon. Okay. The moon is in a shamed state because it's with Saturn and Rahu. There is good things about this eclipse though as well. It's not, I wanted to give the more challenging things first. Okay. Jupiter is aspecting this lunar eclipse with a planetary aspect and also a Western trine. Jupiter always aspects the ninth from himself, and it's a very strong aspect. So with a full aspect, Jupiter is aspecting this lunar eclipse. So there's a lot of luck involved. And whatever happens around your family life with a family member, with a close friend, with your family responsibilities, or with some wealth accumulation, something unexpected is going to happen with those things. It might not be what you had been hoping for or what you had foreseen, and it's going to be limited, but what is left over, okay, this is what Saturn does. Saturn doesn't allow certain things to happen, but it does allow what needs to happen, okay? Saturn is the great teacher in that of scarcity, okay? But what is given is where you get your luck and your wealth, all right? What is left over, what Saturn denies is not supposed to be part of your life, but what is left over, what is there, you will have great abundance with it. You can use your creative intelligence with it. You can invest in it and it will give you luck and grace and it will produce for you in the long run. Okay. Again, this is connected to all second house issues: money, wealth, family responsibilities, relationships with family members, and relationships with close friends. Also, inwardly, it is your inner self-worth and what you base that on. The second house is also the family name. It's our environment. It's how we manage our environment. So if you're looking to change your environment, it's probably going to change in a way that is that you are surprised about, okay? That it was unanticipated. Because the first house is us and the second house is our environment, and it's a reflection of us, okay? So you can have an event around some responsibility you thought you had. One of your responsibilities can be abruptly cut off. The abrupt cutting off is the Mars being in the eighth from this lunar eclipse, and the eighth house is a foundational house. All right. From something. It's the longevity of something and the ability to unravel the mystery of something. The longevity, Mars being in the eighth, Mars cuts things off very quickly, as does the eighth house. Okay. So you can lose a responsibility very abruptly, or have a falling out with a very close friend very abruptly, or they have to go somewhere, leave your life for some reason. something like that. Okay. Or you can lose a possession or get rid of a possession very abruptly, but it's meant to go out of your life. It's meant, it's gone. But what is left over is going to produce for you. You also have the aspect of Mercury. Mercury is a planet of opportunities too. So it's going to give opportunities with what is left over, with the responsibilities you do have, with what the wealth you are managing, okay, with your close friends and family members. And when I say family, especially family that from the childhood, right? So your childhood family, your mother, father, siblings, things like that. Okay. But that aspect of Mercury gives opportunities and gives your ability to gather information. You're going to get the right information about how you want to grow um, your your possessions, your wealth, if that is something that you're interested in. Mercury can have you also organize your responsibilities in a way that, because Mercury is the great organizer and manager, and organize those things in a way that will give you more prosperity. All right. Then what you have to walk through to succeed in second house issues. Again, this is what is left over after Saturn has gotten rid of something, or after Saturn has caused problems with something and you've realized it's not worth it. It's not worth the time and energy. It's not of value to me anymore. Okay. That's the second house when Saturn is influencing it. But what you have to walk through to succeed is Venus, because Venus is in another foundational house from this lunar eclipse. It's in the sixth, that's in Leo. And that means you have to work through diplomacy, kindness, manners, politeness, all belonging to Venus. You have to work through any close relationships you have. You have to work through your own self-worth, which is Venus, and also what is valuable to you. That's going to be a big one during this lunar eclipse. Now, the lunar eclipse, the effects will last a very long time, but the next 2 weeks after the moon begins to wane, that is when you are incorporating all of these insights and understanding that event that happened near the lunar eclipse time in a way that affects your inner world and it becomes part of you. And then you're able to share it with others and make it part of your environment. And then it becomes unconscious the last couple of days during the lunation when the moon is very dark and going to start that lunar eclipse. Again, that will be in your seventh house. Okay. Or solar eclipse, I should say. But that is the last phase of the moon when the moon is very dark. And that means it becomes part of your unconscious. You don't even have to think about it anymore. So remember that polarity of the eighth and second axis as an axis of security, extremely important for an Aquarius rising this eclipse season. Hello, Pisces risings. All right, so these are your predictions for the lunar eclipse that occurs on September 7th. And this lunar eclipse is occurring in your first house, so it's going to be extremely important. I'm using whole sign houses in the tropical zodiac. All right, so for a Pisces, 2 weeks ago, you had a new moon in Virgo, in the very first degree of Virgo. That began the lunation or the new cycle. And now, mid cycle, there is a lunar eclipse. And a lunar eclipse is a full moon that is eclipsed by the Earth's shadow. And so, a full moon with one of the nodes, a full moon on the ecliptic. All right, so a full moon always heralds a realization, a fulfillment of something, all right? And there can be an event that triggers that within the person. And so because the moon is eclipsed, the moon is dark. So what you are expecting is not there. It's something different, it's something unforeseen or unanticipated. And that means that you started a new cycle for a Pisces rising. You started a new cycle around your relationship, your primary relationship, which is the seventh house. It can also be your partner started something new or is trying to start something new. Okay. If you're not in a relationship, it can be around a new business that you want to do or a new business transaction. And that can also apply if you are in a relationship as well. Okay. Because the seventh house is business, the seventh house is business partners, and the seventh house is your romantic partner or your spouse. The seventh house is also dealing with the public, engaging with the public, being in the public eye, being embraced by the public. So, if you work with the public, or it's important that you have popularity, like an actor, a musician, a performing artist or an artist or a musician, something like that. That's also within the realm of the seventh house. So you began a new cycle in those things. And now here it is again, the moon is being eclipsed in the first house. So what does this mean? Well, first of all, whenever there's an eclipse, there is something that happens that we're not expecting, we're not prepared for. It makes a big impression on our lives because it is an eclipse. It is emphasizing the nodes, the nodal axis, the north and south node, which takes a year and a half to move through a sign or a house. Okay. And it's just really emphasizing that polarity. All right. In an unexpected way. Now, a lunar eclipse is not as powerful as a solar eclipse because it is not a lunation, it is not beginning the new cycle of something. But it is a fulfillment, it is a culmination, a realization around something that does stay with us for a few months. All right. And so this will have to do with your body, your appearance, and that also includes your health, especially health that shows up on your outward appearance that people can see. Or it can have to do with an impulse towards something, an impulse towards a path you want to walk in life, a new beginning. See, the angular houses, the first and seventh houses are houses of new beginnings, of starting something new. That's what the angular houses represent. And, like in a general way. All right. The first, fourth, seventh, and 10th houses are the angular houses. Those are the foundations of our life. And something always begins with these houses. Okay. Especially the first house is the beginning of you. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go in life? What is your path in life? The first house will show an impulse towards a certain path. The fifth house, which is also a house of self-expression or dharma, as they call it, inspired action, that's the extension of the first house in the sense that you continue on and you get solid and secure on the path you want to walk based on your self-expression and true individuality. But the first house is the beginning of you. So it's an impulse towards something. This lunar eclipse there, you are moving towards a certain direction in your seventh house issues. But that's connected to you, how you present yourself, the path you want to walk in life, your impulse towards a certain type of life based on your general characteristics and your worldview, the first house. Okay. And so you're expecting to have some kind of fulfillment or result based on that seventh house new moon that occurred 2 weeks ago. But again, it's going to be something unexpected around what kind of new path you want to follow in regards to getting a goal met around your business, around your relationships, around how you deal with the public and your popularity with the public as well. Okay. And just in, what you want to do, the experiences you want to meet with for the next year, or sorry, for the next 9 years. All right. And that's the long-term effects of the eclipse seasons, the eclipses on the first and seventh axis. because there won't be another eclipse like that until around 9 years when the nodes move again. They go through the zodiac and back into your first house. This time it's Rahu. Rahu is all about new experiences, trying something that we've never done before. Okay. Um, so what you're expecting around your body, maybe you have a goal around doing a business with where your appearance is important. That can also there can be a realization around those things, but you'll have to adjust your expectations because Saturn is there. Saturn is a planet where you the results are limited or you're denied something, but not completely, because what is left over will last for a very long time. Saturn gives long-term effects, especially when Jupiter is also in the mix, and Jupiter is because Jupiter aspects this lunar eclipse. So there is a lot of luck, there is a lot of grace, there are long-term effects with this lunar eclipse. Okay? So whatever's left over, you're going to have a lot of luck with. It's not going to be what you were expecting, but what does come out of it in regards to you, your appearance, your path in life, what your impulses are leading you towards, whatever is left over and whatever happens is going to be a long-term effect in regards to you and your partner, you and your business, you and your popularity, and you in dealing with other people in general, which is also the seventh house. Secondarily, this can also have to do with the residence in foreign countries, if that's the direction you're going in life, because the seventh house has to do with residence in foreign countries and also traveling to a foreign country, always a foreign country. All right. So, so that can show up as well. But this lunar eclipse, it's also being aspected by Mercury. And Mercury will allow you to gather all the information you need to move forward on your life's path, to know what new life you want to have or start something new. Okay. Mercury will have you testing things, but it's especially around, investigating something to find what is right for you in regards to partnerships, business, all of those seventh house issues, and the path you want to walk in regards to those things. Okay. So extremely important lunar eclipse for a Pisces. And you will remember this eclipse. It's going to make a big impression. Anytime there's an eclipse, lunar or solar, in your first house, that shows the beginning of something new in a big way. That involves you, your personality, your path in life, your body, your appearance, all of those things, okay? And in how you relate to others. So again, these angles always begin something new, and there's some stress around it. The nodes, Rahu and Ketu, as they move through the first seventh axis, they cause stress in beginning something new, but you have that impulse to begin something new. Go ahead and do it. Saturn will show you what isn't going to work. Okay. It can be frustrating, but it's still going to leave something. The thing that it leaves is the long-term thing. All right. And this also can be in regards to your relationship, life, or in how you're reacting to how your partner is changing, because your partner is also going through a lot of transitions and transformations due to the lunation 2 weeks ago in Virgo and your natural seventh house, and then also to the eclipse that will occur in Virgo on September 21st.